to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about how I actually started working as a distiller. So it all started a couple of years ago, and my dad was driving in his car listening to the radio, and they were interviewing a woman, an instructor, that worked at the KPU brewing program. And she had worked at all these different places for AB InBev, and she'd made Guinness before, and she'd worked all around the world. It just seemed like she had led a very interesting life and career. And when my dad came home, he told me about this interview that he'd listened to on the radio. And he said, "Oh, I think you'd be good at that. Maybe you should try applying to that brewing program." And so in the end, I did apply, and I started studying there in that brewing program. In that brewing program, we actually had a brewery. So every 2 weeks or so, we'd go in and we'd make a beer, maybe a lager or a pale ale, and then we also had the opportunity to come up with our own beer recipe and brew it, make it, market it, and sell it to people. And that was pretty fun. But if there's any home brewers out there, then you'll know that a lot of brewing is just cleaning. I would say like 95% of brewing beer is just cleaning, and you're working with caustics a lot. So I didn't really like that. And while I was in the brewing program, I was very interested in distilling. I'd always kind of been fascinated with the stills and their equipment. It always looked so beautiful and shiny, and I wondered how they made spirits compared to beer. So that was always a bit of an interest of mine. And since I was young, I'd always wanted to work in the United Kingdom because my dad, a long time ago, studied in England, and both my dad and my mom and my two brothers lived there for a while. And actually, both my brothers were born there, and I was the only one that was born in Canada. And I always felt a little bit jealous that everyone else in my family had lived in the UK except for me, and I wanted to give it a try as well. And so at the time, I was very interested in living in the United Kingdom, and I was also very interested and curious about distilling. So I thought, what is the UK famous for? Well, Scotland is famous for Scotch, and in England, gin is very popular, so I feel like that would be a very good place to learn more about distilling. So then I thought, well, I have nothing to lose, so I'll just email a bunch of distilleries in the UK and see if any of them would be willing to take me on. A couple of months before I was supposed to graduate from the brewing program, I started emailing all of these different distilleries in the UK. And what I did was I basically just Googled the Scotch Whisky Distilleries or gin distilleries in England, and then on Wikipedia, a whole list of all the Scotch Whisky Distilleries came up. And so I just went down the list one by one, and I found the contact information of the distillery, and I just sent them an email. It was really the same email, but I just changed the name of the distillery and certain things. And I just sent maybe 70 emails, and I kept a big Excel spreadsheet of which distillery I had contacted and the date I had emailed them and whether they had responded to me or not. And I also kind of made a note of what kind of response they had. So was it just they didn't respond? Was it a no? Or was it like a regretful no? So I also graded their rejections as well. And at the time, I really didn't think anyone was going to answer me at all. But I just felt like, oh, I'll just do this. And then I can say to myself that, oh, at least I tried, and I don't have to feel bad about it because I'd done everything in my power to go and work in the UK at a distillery. Yeah, so I had no real expectation that anyone would actually hire me because I was just a brewing student, and so I just knew how to make beer. I didn't know anything at all about distilling, actually. And I'm sure there are a lot of distillers already with experience living in the UK. So every night I'd come home from school and I'd just send off a couple of emails to different distilleries in the UK asking if I could work there for a short period of time. And so I sent one email to a Scotch Whisky Distillery, and within a few minutes of sending that email, someone replied me and said, "Oh, okay, interesting. Please send along your CV," and he passed me off to the distillery manager. We had an interview over Skype, and then he hired me for a 1-year contract position. And that distillery, of course, is the Borders Distillery in Hawick, Scotland. You'll see I started my YouTube channel while I was working at the Borders Distillery. So if you're nosy, you can go back to my older videos and you'll see the founder, John Fordyce, who's the one that initially replied to my email. And you'll also see Andrew Nairn, the distillery manager, who interviewed me initially. So a lot of my coworkers were also gracious enough to be in my YouTube videos, and you can see them there if you would like to. My contract at the Borders Distillery was initially for 1 year, but I ended up working there for 1 year and 2 months because the pandemic started, and it just made it very difficult for me to find another position because of that. However, with that 2-month extension, I was able to find another place to work. So as you see in my other videos, after the Borders Distillery, I went to Wales and worked at a distillery. And then I went to England, Stratford-upon-Avon, and worked at the Shakespeare Distillery. And then I moved to Manchester and worked at Boothstown Gin for a little bit. Yes. It's been a pretty interesting adventure so far. I've got to work in Scotland, work in Wales, and work at England, and do all these, and distill all these different kinds of spirits, which has been very interesting. But also stressful too, because it's not like I have all of these short-term contracts planned out in advance. I've just had to keep pushing, and so sometimes after work I'll have to come home and just email a bunch of distilleries to see if they'll take me on for these short-term contracts. But I think moving from distillery to distillery to distillery and distilling all these different kinds of spirits has allowed me to learn how different distilleries operate. Well, that about summarizes how I started working as a distiller in the UK. As you can tell, I had no actual distilling experience or education beforehand. I just sent a bunch of emails out and hoped for the best. And someone actually replied to me and gave me the chance to work as a distiller. So I hope that inspires some of you in whatever career field you're in to just go and contact people, any stranger, and ask them to give you an opportunity to start working in that field, because you never know what they'll say. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any other questions for me or any ideas for videos you would like me to make. In the meantime, please support the channel by giving this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more distilling and distillery videos. This is Brewbird, sending good vibes your way. I'll see you next time.